ओम स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। गुरुब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुस्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। Today is the Ashadha Purnima day. This is also called the Vyasa Purnima or Guru Purnima. Vyasa is called the Guru of all the sages, because it is this Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa who systematized the whole knowledge of the Vedas, that is the spiritual experiences from time immemorial of the Vedic Rishis. So he divided them into 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda and Atharva Veda. So he systematically separated these mantras because he had the full knowledge of all the mantras. So he is called the Guru of the Gurus, having the full knowledge of the entire knowledge of the Vedas. So in the final analysis, the Vedas, they accept God Himself, the Supreme Brahman Himself, who has become this whole world, who is maintaining this world, who dissolved this world, and this whole world is in Him. This whole world or whole universe is another form of Himself. So it is that God Himself who is the first Guru. He is in the first form of the first Guru because he taught the knowledge of this Atman or Brahman, knowledge of God, to the first disciple of him through Brahma. The manifestation of Guru as Guru of the Paramatma himself is in the form of Chaturmukha Brahma. In the Puranas we find the pictures from the Navi Kamala of Sri Vishnu. A big lotus has come and Brahma is sitting on that. He is the first Devata to be created, and from him all the Devatas, all the Gandharvas, all the human beings and the subhuman beings, the whole creation evolved. And Brahma is the Adi Guru. So that is why in the Vedas it is said, Brahma Devanam Prathamas Sambhabhuva. Brahma was born the first being from the Lord, and God imparted this whole knowledge of the Vedas to him. What is this knowledge of the Vedas? Knowledge of the Vedas consists of 3 main subjects. What is it? About God, about the human soul, about the creation, and the relationship between one another. This is all the subject matter of all the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and all the philosophies. It speaks about the Brahman, the Supreme God, then His creation. His creation is of 2 kinds. One is the souls, individual souls, the Jivatmas, and the nature, the Prakriti, the external world. So the universe, the soul, and the Lord. So these 3 form the subject matter of all the Vedas. So in the Vedas it is said, this first born Devata, that is Chaturmukha Brahma, this Brahma teaches his first disciple Atharvan. Then Atharvan teaches Angi. Angi teaches Bharadwaja Satyavaha. And this Bharadwaja Satyavaha teaches Angira. 4 generations after Brahma, they are taught without the Guru being approached by the disciple. The Guru himself calls his disciple I will teach you, take this Brahma Vidya. So without the Shishya, the disciple, approaching the Guru, all the 4 generations, they got the knowledge. Because they had got so much of purity, they were ready to accept the teachings of the Guru. So they did not require approaching the Guru, serving the Guru, getting his grace and getting approval from him. Then Guru would impart them the knowledge. Later on, this method came. So after the first generation, from Brahma to Angira, so the Guru used to call the disciple, directly impart it. And the disciple was found fit to receive the knowledge. Later on, the Guru had to test whether the Shishya is eligible for such a high knowledge. Thus comes, because it was taught by Brahma to his first disciple Atharvan, then Atharvan to Angi, Angi to Satyavaha, Satyavaha to Angira. That means from one Guru to the another, Para Avara. Para is the Guru, the superior. Avara is the inferior, the disciple. So from Guru to disciple, Guru to disciple, Guru to disciple. So Para Avara, it came, so it's called the Paravara Vidya. This Paravara Vidya is called the Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of God. So this Parampara, Param, Apara, Para, Apara becomes Parampara. So Vedic Parampara started with Brahma himself. This is what the Upanishads talk about. So as I was telling, after the first 4 Gurus, from 5th Guru onwards, we find in the Vedas, there is a method of getting the knowledge from the Guru. Guru does not go and just go to the Shishya and then give him the knowledge as the first 4 Gurus did. The Shishya had to go in search of the Guru, and then he will go and then just salute him and serve him. And then when the Guru is pleased with him, approves, yes, you can stay with me and study, I will impart to you. Then he will put questions to the Guru, then he will receive the knowledge of the Brahman. This is called the Guru Upasadana Vidhi. Going to the Guru, the rule of going to the Guru. Guru Upasadana Vidhi. Method of approaching the Guru, it got established from that time onwards. Afterwards, in all the cases of all the great acharyas, all the great saints and seers, the disciple approaching the Guru. Except when it comes to Sri Ramakrishna again, the God himself. So him again the Gurus go on to approach, and then they impart knowledge to him, as in the Satyuga. So Sri Ramakrishna has brought the Satyuga, that's why they say, he goes back to the parampara of Brahma, he directly imparted. Brahma himself received all the knowledge without going to Parabrahman. Parabrahman from within himself, he gave the knowledge. So Sri Ramakrishna of that type. We will come to that one. So the Guru Upasadana Parampara, the tradition of the disciple going to the Guru got started from the 5th generation of the Gurus. So how to approach the Guru? Bhagavad Gita gives you a very good shloka. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Bhagavad Gita says the Shishya should go and salute the Guru, indicating that I want knowledge from you. You are a man of knowledge and I am ignorant. Please bless me with the knowledge. So with all humility, sincerity and yearning, he must go to the Guru and then salute the Guru. Pranipata means to submit and salute the Guru. After salutation, then he serves him, sevaya. He is I am ready to serve you, because in those times it was all a residential education. It was not going like day scholars now. Being in the house for 18 hours, only for 6 hours you go to college. Which influence will be more upon you? Not the college influence. The house influence will be more upon you. Our people are more attached to things of the world than the highest knowledge that is taught in the colleges. So, in those times, and even in these times also, the best education is imparted when the Guru and the Shishya stay together. So wherever that opportunity is there, Guru is a capable Guru, Shishya is the capable recipient, then the knowledge that comes and the knowledge that comes out of the disciple will be extraordinary. So in those times he had to go and he had to be welcomed by the teacher into his own house as his own son. So this Sanskrit word putra means both the meanings. Putra means he may be a disciple also, he may be his son also. There is a common word, this putra. So this he is to be accepted as his own son. Then he would stay as one of the members of his family. He would serve all the members of the family, helping in every small trivial things also, as well as big things also, along with getting education, getting all the knowledge from the Guru. So this is called the Sevaya. So the Gita says, Pariprashnena Sevaya. After serving the Guru, he gets the grace of the Guru, love of the Guru. When the disciple comes, first of all, he saluted him with all humility and earnestness. Then, he started serving him. Then the Guru becomes very much attracted to him, as one is attracted to a lovable person, one's own son, one's own daughter. So he accepts him as his own disciple. Then he allows the disciple to question whatever doubt he has. The disciple has gone with only one doubt, that we hear that his whole universe is come out of Brahman. That means everything is only Brahman. Brahman is all knowledge, all joy and infinite life. But we don't see any infinite life in this world. We don't see infinite joy here. We don't see infinite knowledge. But this creation is all the Brahman alone. How can there be like that in the Brahman which is only one? How is it appears as many? And the Brahman which is full of joy, full of happiness, full of knowledge and full of infinite life, where can there be death? Where can there be sorrow? Where can there be unhappiness? Which we see in this world. So, this is the question he has. Let me know the truth by which everything will be known in this world. So, this is the question of the disciple, and the Guru answers them. When he understands the meaning, that it is from the infinite Brahman that the whole universe has come. Though it appears as many, it is only one at the root, at the base, at the essentials. So this is how the Guru-Shishya relationships are. Man has always found solace. We find in the history of philosophy, history of religion, always man finds solace in believing and worshipping higher forces than his own senses revealed to him. All of us see the world through our senses. We are not satisfied with it. All of us, whether we are placed in some favorable circumstances or unfavorable, we all know that this world is not perfect by itself. It requires many things to be corrected. That is why all the wise people have said. Once Swami Vivekananda got very much perplexed about this incongruence in the world. So he said, if I had created the world, I would have created better, he said. That means there is so much of imperfection. So we are not satisfied with this world. So we always consider that there is a higher world, there is a higher being which is more perfect than this world, more perfect than these human beings. And that belief is there in every religion, not only in Hinduism. All religions believe that there are some higher forces than the world that we see through our senses. All religions believe in a God. All religions believe in divine beings. Next to God, there will be so many other beings who are also divine. And also ancestral angels. All believe in the ancestors living in their own divine bodies, what we call as Pitris. They also live. All religions believe in that. All religions have their own rituals. It is not only Hinduism. Every religion, whether it believes in form or no form, they have their rituals to worship God, worship these angels, worship these divine beings. Man is not his body, but he has been caught into it, is the belief of most of the religions. All the people, they say man had a fall. The Christian religion says man fell from a higher state to a lower state through sin. So that means man was at a higher level. The level of the man is a fallen state. So he tends to rise to the higher level. Just as a water finds its own level. We are taught in the physics. If you bring a water from a higher level to a lower level by a pipe, and you cut off this pipe here, this water jumps. How much it will jump? To the level of the water where the source is there. It jumps like that, like a fountain. Because the level is there, from there it has been brought down. Its tendency is to go back into that same level. Similarly, human beings also, they want to rise to the higher state from which they have fallen. Man's state is a fallen state. He has to attain to his pristine state through leading a moral, spiritual life, is the belief of most of the religions. All the religions believe man is not what he looks like, a very pitiable being, helpless and full of evils. It is not that. He has got a glorious life. So he has fallen from that. So we are seeing him in a degraded state. He can rise again and become God-like. God himself, he may become one with God. This is the belief of almost all the religions. Those who have realized these truths of God, of soul, of this universe, and who teach them to the others also, and lead them to the path of realizing the truth, they are called Gurus. Gurus are those who have realized this truth and who are able to teach to the others also the method by which they can also realize the truth of God, truth of their own souls, truth of behind this whole universe. Why we are in a abundant state, how we can get out of this abundant state to a free state, how we can attain moksha or the spiritual freedom. All these things are known or experienced by a person who is capable of and who wants to teach to others. He is called the real Guru. Their teachings, that such Guru's teachings, are more effective than mere book knowledge of religion. You may read hundreds of books, you will never become spiritual. But if you see a spiritual man, his influence upon you will be tremendous. You feel like becoming spiritual. So many books you read, you are not inspired. One person's contact for an hour or half an hour, that is enough. It creates a thirst in you. I must also realize this higher truth as this man has realized. That is the effect of a real Guru. As such, religious teachers are many. We know in the history of religion, there are religious teachers in Christianity, in Judaism, in Mohammedanism, in Buddhism, in Jainism, in all religions, and of course Hindu religion. So there are thousands and thousands of religious teachers are there, many. There are many, and the paths they show for God realization are also many. There are all different methods. So they find out a particular method that is best suited for their age, their climb, and their level of social consciousness. All this they take into consideration and they impart this knowledge so that the disciples, with the least effort and comfortably, they can realize this truth of God, truth of their own souls, and truth behind this whole universe. So, such teachings appear to vary, but they vary only as far as the externals are concerned. Basically, they are the same. When we go to the deep principles in every religion, they are all one. Only in the externals, in some rituals, in their dress, or in their external observations, they may appear different. But the beginner will get confused. The aspirant in the beginning can get confused and hence needs some guide in the beginning. Thus is felt the necessity of a guru, the guide in spiritual life. Many of us feel, should we have at all a guru? We know, we have read, God is everywhere, God is in our hearts also. We can pray to God who is in the heart. God can guide us because God is all powerful. Can He not guide me? All this is glib talk. We can talk. But when it comes to actuality, you don't feel that their God is inside you, nor are you able to call to Him as you call to a man outside. So it is all glib talk only. So that is why when you only read books and think that an external guru is not required, that we are not mature enough. When we get into the essentials of practice, when we want to practice, we certainly require a guide in a physical form, and that form through which the highest teachings about of the masters come, he is called the spiritual guide or the guru. Sri Ramakrishna realized God without any formal guru. As it was said in the early times, there was no guru. God inspired them from inside because they were so pure, so sincere, so yearning, and absolutely untouched by any other thought than attaining their own glorious divinity that was within themselves. So, with that purity, they could get the knowledge from within themselves. But those are very, very, very few. They cannot be a rule. They are only exceptions. We cannot follow exceptions. So his pure mind, Sri Ramakrishna's pure mind and yearning for God got him the highest enlightenment. Even he too, guide others by the usual path to God realization, accepted gurus later. We read in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, he realized the highest without gurus. First of all, he took Diksha from an ordinary guru, Kinaram Bhattacharya, the mantra of Kali, and then he realized Kali in her form, in his formless form. So after realizing Kali, he went one after another, realized Rama, realized Krishna. Then he went for Advaitic sadhanas. He realized the Advaita state, the highest state of I and Brahman are one, Aham Brahmasmi. We realized the highest. All these things he did without practically any guru, all by himself. But later on, he took one or three gurus. One is Brahmani, another is Ramayat Sadhu, and third one is Govindarai for Muslim religion, and Totapuri for the Advaitic sadhana, just to show others that ordinary people should not follow me, going without a guru, want to try. Because Shankaracharya writes in his commentary, you may be a very great learned person, but don't try to practice Vedanta by reading books. You can't. You must have the guidance of a guru. Sarva Shastrajnopi Swatantrena Brahma Jnananveshanam na kuryat. Shankara writes. He may be a biggest scholar, but never try to realize Brahman by through your scholarly knowledge. It will not help. So you have to take shelter under a guru, then under his guidance only you can realize God. So this guru is necessity for everyone, and even the avatars, they show us the same path. Don't follow us in this particular aspect, that we realize God without a guru, that we can also do without it. All the common people must have a guide. That we see in our common life also. When we go to a new town or city, don't we take a tourist guide? Suppose you don't take a tourist guide, you are new to a place, especially if you go to an outside country. So taking a tourist guide is a must. You may be caught anywhere and put in jail for disobeying the traffic rules or other rules. Tourist guide is a must anywhere. If you take a tourist guide in the shortest time, very comfortably, you can see maximum of places. This is our experience. Similarly, in the spiritual world, we want a guide. If a guide is there, if a guru is there, he can eschew us from all these bylanes and bypaths which may mislead us. He takes us to the main path, the shortest route to the knowledge. So, a guru is required for almost every one of us. Scriptures contain also, there is another reason why we want a guru. Scriptures contain many important teachings mixed up with unimportant teachings also. The disciple may get caught in the unimportant ones But the Guru will say, no, these are all unimportant things. The scriptures speak about the world also. Scriptures speak about Brahman also. So what we want is Brahman, to realize God. How to realize God? That is the most important point in the scripture. There are other worldly things are also there. If you go to the Upanishads, if you go to the other scriptures also, they tell you how to earn money, how to destroy your enemy, how to keep a good health, or how to beget a good child. All these things are there. It is all good things. There is nothing wrong about it. But they are not very important for us. We want to manifest our own divinity. We want to know our Father who is in heaven. So we want to know God. So that is the most important thing. So the Guru will say, no, the other things are in scriptures, but they are not important, unimportant. This is the important. So Tattvamasi, you are that important. Aham Brahmasmi, that is important. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, that is important. These are all Mahavakyas are there. The Guru takes out these important things and imparts them to the student. He is saved from whiling away his time or wasting his time on unimportant things. Therefore also we require a Guru. And what should be the qualification of this Guru? It is a big problem now. In the modern days, in the olden days, there were recognized Gurus. They came by a parampara. So you can trace the parampara of Shankaracharya school. From Govindapada down to now, the Shankara parampara is there. So there is a dynasty, there is a hierarchy of Gurus continuously bringing the right knowledge to you. Similarly, Ramanuja Sampradaya is there, Madhva Sampradaya is there, Nimbarka Sampradaya, Vallabha Sampradaya. There is a Sampradaya, unbroken chain of Gurus are coming. Latest is Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna Sampradaya. Coming in the last 150 years, one after another, Gurus impart what their Gurus have told them without changing in a single word. They impart it to the next generation. We get the unsullied, uncontaminated, unpolluted teachings of the great Lord Sri Ramakrishna today also from an unbroken chain of Gurus. So, but it is not always the case. We find hundreds of Gurus in India, outside India, everywhere Guru cult has grown. So each one proclaims, I am a Guru. So what sort of a Guru is? No, I can give you Samadhi in 6 months. So one of our Swamis went to Russia, Swami Ranganathananji, and he found one Russian gentleman came and told, Sir, I attended the classes of one yogi from Himalayas. He taught me Samadhi in 6 months, he said. Ranganathananji was surprised. Who is that yogi from Himalayas? No, where is he from Himalayas? Himalayas range from Afghanistan right up to Arunachal Pradesh, 2,500 miles. Which place is that yogi from? No, we don't know. He said, I am from Himalaya. In 2,500 miles, nobody knows the address of the Guru. And he has given a certificate to that man. We have attained Samadhi. And this man is lying there, and he must have paid some rubles or dollars or Russian some coins, currency. So Guru cult is going on. That is why the great Acharyas, Shankaracharya says that the Guru, even Shankaracharya quotes from the scriptures. The Vedas say the Guru must have 3 main qualities. If he is there, then he will be very safe and very dependable, so we can approach him and then expect good knowledge from him. Shrotriyo avrijano akamata. This is the Vedas. The Vedas say Guru must be a Shrotriya. Shrotriya means he must know the Shrutis, the Vedas. Vedas means not the words themselves. You need not have committed to memory all the mantras, but the central meaning of the Vedas, that everything is Brahman. In everything is Brahman alone. And for a man of realization, he will see God alone in everything. He loves everyone because God is inside himself, outside him. He is part and parcel of God. He has to love God, and God is there in everyone. So this knowledge, the central knowledge of the scriptures, he should know. He should have realized this one, that everything is Brahman. Brahman, God is inside me, God is inside everyone. With eyes closed also he will see, he sees God in meditation. With eyes open also he sees God in everyone. So this is called the Shrotriyatva. He must be a Shrotriya, knower of Shastras. Similarly, Avrijinaha. Avrijinaha means he must be a holy, pure man. His life must be pure. His life must be holy. A touch of him must make others also feel that I become holier. All my sins are gone. All my evils have left me. So he must be beyond the evils and sins. So Avrijinaha, he must be pure and holy. Third is Akamahataha. Petty desires for name, fame, money, etc. should never be there. Or any sense enjoyments, he must be above all. So Akamahataha. Shrotriyo Avrijino Akamahataha. If these qualities are found in a person, that human guru, he may appear as human guru, but through him, the Lord himself will impart the teachings to us. So one can accept him. And of course, Shankara in other places, he says other qualities of the Guru also. He must be a Daya Sindhu. He must be an ocean of mercy. He does not teach for any money or teach for any name or fame, but just out of pity for the suffering souls. We are suffering because we don't have the knowledge that we belong to God and God belongs to us. There is nothing for me to be unhappy about. But I have forgotten this one. So instead of thinking I am the Atman and the child of God, I am thinking I am this body and a pitiable son of so-and-so, born in a poor family, uneducated, ignorant. I think I identify myself with my body and mind. This ignorance, because of this one, we suffer. When we begin to think that we are children of God, all the godly qualities are inside us. So if we can manifest it, then we ourselves will feel there is nothing to suffer, nothing to sorrow about in this world. So this knowledge the Guru gives to us, just looking at our pitiable state, possessing the infinite knowledge, infinite joy and infinite life, these human beings are thinking their bodies, they are thinking their souls and they are suffering. So let me take them out of this sorrow, out of pity, out of mercy. He comes and teaches. So he is called the ocean of mercy, Daya Sindhu. The Guru is called the Daya Sindhu. Bandhuhu Anamatam Satam. Whoever goes and takes refuge under him, sir, I have come here to know the knowledge of God and get over these miseries of this world. Anybody who comes to him, irrespective of caste or creed or color or religion or sex, he will teach them. So he is friend to everyone who is humble to approach him for this higher knowledge. So this is the quality of the Guru, Shankaracharya says, and that works even now. How to judge a person is Guru? As I said, there are hundreds of Guru cults going on. How to know that a person is a Guru? Just judge him. Does he see God in himself and in others? Is he a holy person who is free from all evils and who does not want anything, name or fame or money or anything? Only out of love he teaches you. If these qualities are there, he is a good Guru. So they give us the standard Gurus, the description of a standard Guru. Sri Ramakrishna himself said, test the Guru well before you accept him as your Guru. See, he allowed the freedom to his disciples, including Narendranath, to test me in whatever you want. Then if I pass that test, then only you accept me as Guru. I don't want you to take me as a Guru without testing me. So he gave them the freedom, they tested him also. We read in his life, you will wonder how much of freedom he gave to his disciples. And every one of them, later on they had to accept that there can be no higher Guru than Sri Ramakrishna. So a disciple also must have certain basic qualities. Mainly is he must have devotion to his God and Guru. He must be dedicated to God and to Guru. And if whatever is required, whatever sacrifices are required to achieve this knowledge, he must be ready to serve the Guru, to undergo all difficulties of spiritual practices. He must be ready. That means he must be ready for tapasya, hardship, the learning, the acquisition of knowledge to either the secular or the spiritual, Both require concentration of mind. Concentration of mind requires the control of senses. Control of senses requires hard labor. Work hard. Alertness must grow. All this is called tapasya. So without tapasya, you cannot have either secular knowledge or spiritual knowledge. We are neglecting this tapasya. We think the world is a garden of roses. Roses also have got thorns, we must be aware of it. So we are not taught about thorns, we are taught about only roses, which is half knowledge. So tapasya is part and parcel of any good knowledge, any deep knowledge. If you want to go to pure sciences, you have to burn your midnight oil. You can't achieve anything. Similarly in Brahmajnana also, one must be ready for tapasya. One means dedication to the Guru and the God. Second is ready for tapasya and to serve the Guru in every way. So these are the qualities of the disciple. If it is there, then we receive the teachings of the Guru, they become fruitful in us. Through the Guru, we receive the teachings of God. Through the human Guru, whatever teachings we receive in the spiritual life, Guru will ask us to chant the name of God. He will ask us to pray. He will ask us to go to the company of the holy, at least once in a while. Go to the holy places where holy people come and think about God, sing about God, speak about God. Hey, you must spend some time amongst them, holy company. And then always keep your mind open and thinking. Look at the world with a discriminative eyes. Don't just jump at conclusions. See the world and then think about it. How much of it is long lasting? How much of it is only short living? So there are things that can last only for 1 year. Yet things can last for 10 years. Some things can last 100 years. Something may last beyond 100 years, but you will not be there to see whether they last or not. So 100 years is the last stage we can judge. So we must have a perceiving eye. So look at the world with a discriminative look, viveka. So always keep your intelligence open and just judge everything, whether it is a long-lasting thing, whether it is a permanent thing, or whether it is a transitory thing. Don't waste your money, don't waste your time, don't waste your energies on short-lived things. Spend it on the eternally living God, eternally living spiritual knowledge, eternally living knowledge of your own divine self. So this sort of a discipline should come into the disciple. The disciple should be yearning for spiritual knowledge. He should be the spirit of renunciation. That means he does not want any things of the world which are only short-lived. And then he wants God alone, which is eternally living. And then he must be ready to serve the Guru. And then he must lead a pure life, lead a truthfulness, life of truthfulness. The disciple must be dedicated to this truth. So thus the Supreme God grants spiritual enlightenment to all aspirants through the physical Guru. Though the physical Guru is there, he is a human being, but the teaching that comes through him comes through his soul. This soul is part and parcel of the infinite Paramatma himself. Infinite soul imparts our spiritual teachings through the individual soul of the Guru. So it is that infinite spirit that is speaking through the Guru we call as our Guru. So that Guru is eternal. It is that Guru which we call Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. It is that inner Guru. So through the outer form, what speaks through that outer form, through the tongue of the Guru, is the infinite spirit. Through his soul, he speaks and he gives us imparts us the knowledge of Brahman. Therefore, though we call the physical form of the Guru as our Guru, in our mind, Gurus themselves say, don't think my physical form is your Guru, because physical form will go away. But Guru is eternal. Guru cannot die. That is the inner self of the Guru. It is eternal. So that spirit that gave you the instruction through your Guru, it will appear to you in the form of Guru eternally until you get completely released from all the bondage of Maya. One very interesting incident is there. Swami Subodhanandaji's life. Subodhanandaji was a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. So he had initiated some devotees. So one devotee got a vision. She was very seriously ill. So she was perhaps in a delirium. And then she saw in the vision her guru appearing. That is Subodhanandaji appearing. And then giving her consolation, comfort. No, don't worry, all this will go. You will get up, you will be all right. And very shortly she became well. She went to Swami Subodhanandaji and then thanked him profusely. Sir, how much is your grace? You came in my vision and then comforted me in that critical state. Then Subodhanandaji said, no, I did not come. So then who came? Then Subodhanandaji himself said, Sri Ramakrishna himself came in my form. Because you have seen me, you have not seen Sri Ramakrishna. At that time, Sri Ramakrishna, if he had appeared, you would have thought somebody has come. That was not the time when he wanted to confuse you. So he himself took my form and came to you. So immediately you could recognize, oh, my Guru has come. And you got the comfort. And then you came away. It was Sri Ramakrishna who came to you. That is true in every one of our cases also. Any one of our cases, we see our Gurus in our dreams, in our visions. It is not the Guru, it is God himself is coming to you. Because he has spoken through your Guru. And eternally he is with you in the form of your Guru to guide you. Whenever you are in difficulty, your Guru appears. I have seen one devoted lady, householder. She was about to die and she had been initiated by a Guru, not in our mission. So in some traditional way. And she was about to die. I was there in the deathbed. Before her death, she raised both her hands and then looked at one corner of the room and said, Acharya Ravandrakar, Guru has come. She is seeing the Guru. God himself has come to her in the form of her Guru. It's happening. So when Guru appears to you in your dream, it is that eternal form of Guru, Sri Ramakrishna himself or the Lord himself takes to guide us all. That is how we call Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. That is the inner spirit, Paramatma himself, though it is through a physical form. And in the spiritual life, we must also consider, we must have tremendous patience and perseverance. We have the very wonderful story of Sri Ramakrishna. Two yogis were practicing tapasya. One was Narada was going to Vaikunta. So first yogi, then when he came to know that Narada is going to Vaikunta, then he said, oh Narada, you are going to Vaikunta. You find out from Narayana, I am calling upon him for last 50 years. So he has not graced me in any way. When will I get my salvation? You ask and then bring the answer to me. So Narada said, all right, I will tell him. Then the next yogi, so he was also said. So he said, you see, I am also here. So I am also practicing this spiritual practices for so many years. Please find out when I will get. All right, I will come. He went. Then when he returned, so he first met the first yogi who had already practiced 50 years of sadhana. Then he met him and then told about you. Narayana said that you will have to wait for 4 more births. Then you will get realization. 4 more births? Already 50 years I have practiced. This birth is gone. Another 4 more births. Then he fell down in great dissatisfaction. He was so much depressed, hearing 4 more births I have to take. Then Narada proceeded further, went to the other yogi. Then he told him, I inquired about you. He says, you see here in this tamarind tree, the number of leaves upon this one, can you count? He said, nobody can count. So many births you have to take before you get realization. Then he started dancing. Said, at least at the end of that one, after all, it has got some limited number only. It is not infinite. Someday the number of the leaves will come to an end and I will get mukti. Wonderful. He started dancing. Immediately there was a voice from the heaven. He said, now itself you are released because you are ready to wait for so many births for your realization. This patience will pay you. So Sri Ramakrishna's story. So all the gurus tell this. You do your sadhanas and wait. In the proper time it happens. In Sri Ramakrishna's life, in his direct disciples' life, we see so many aspirants go to them. So they tell to some of them, you have to wait for some time. That means you have to improve the moral life and the spiritual life through some spiritual practices. When that maturity comes, you will be able to progress. Until then, your progress will be slow. Therefore, patience and perseverance is very important. So all these qualities in the disciple, in the gurus, have been told by our great acharyas, the great spiritual teachers, and those spiritual teachers are called the gurus. It is them that we remember on this day. Whosoever may be your guru, they are all part and parcel of that infinite guru, Paramatma. So, this Paramatma is manifesting in so many ways. Guru comes when the pupil is ready with yearning and the spirit of total surrender. How to find the guru? The great teachers tell, you don't have to go and find the guru. You will not be able to judge the proper guru. That's the problem with us. Now we think we can select our own guru. How can you select a guru? You are ignorant. Suppose my child says, Appa, I can judge you whether you are good or wrong. How will you not laugh at it? This fellow, yesterday he is born, ignorant fool, he wants to judge me. I can tell you, Papa, how you are, how much you know. If the child says, you laugh at it. Similarly is the case when we say, I will select my guru. No, not this guru, that guru. That. You will not be able to select. The guru must come to you when you are ready. That's why great acharyas, great teachers, including our teachers in our parampara, they always say, don't run after the guru. Guru will come to you at the right time, when you are ready for receiving the guru. Develop the yearning. First of all, develop desire for spiritual advancement. Now we are all not bothered about spiritual life. Turn the mind that there is a spiritual side for our personality. Without it, we can never be completely happy. We can be happy only when we are happy in our secular life and in our spiritual life also. So both of them, when they are happy, we are completely happy. Otherwise, spiritually, inner peace is not there, inner joy is not there. The inner enemies like jealousy, anger are not assuaged or destroyed. How can you get happiness? By gadgets outside and living in a AC room. You can't get it. So there must be some conveniences and comforts from the outside world. From inside world, we must conquer some of the inner enemies. That is possible by the spiritual practices. Therefore, we must practice these things and bring under our control, to an extent, our inner senses, and a yearning will come. Oh, we want to realize our own divine nature. This desire for a higher knowledge must come, and spirit of total surrender to the teacher. So when we wait, the right teacher will come by himself. All the sincere seekers have got their own teachers. So we have seen so many cases. They come and tell us, Swami, I have been waiting for 20 years. So I could not get the proper guru. Whenever I thought of a guru, I thought my guru has not come to me. Somehow I was not attracted to anyone. So and so came. I was attracted to him. And I thought that he is my guru. And then they became real guru and real disciple. They were very happy with one another. So we have to first develop this sincere yearning for higher life, and then when we are ready for the approach of a guru will come. Swami Vivekananda gave an example for this one. In the economic world, they say, when there is a demand, there is always a supply. When there is a demand, supply must come. From where it comes, it fulfills itself. If there is a demand, a supply will come. The economic world will go on. Similarly, in the spiritual world also, if there is a yearning soul, if it wants the guru will certainly come. So these gurus, they always, as I said in the beginning, they come with a great tradition behind them. Guru Parampara, a dynasty of gurus. Great Guru Sri Ramakrishna was there. His disciples Vivekananda, Brahmananda, Premananda were there. Their disciples were there, their disciples, our gurus were there, and their disciples, we are there. Our disciples will go. So this will go on for 1500 years, Swami Vivekananda said. 1500 years, a dynasty will go of gurus, and the real teachings of the guru will be imparted from mouth to mouth in a living form. Similarly is the parampara, wherever the long parampara is there, unbroken parampara, a hierarchy of gurus, there we can get genuine. So Guru's line is preserved in an unbroken line in traditional mutts of Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, Madhva and others. It is very strong and vibrant in Sri Ramakrishna's Guru Parampara. This Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission is the Guru Parampara of Sri Ramakrishna. We can see living examples of the highest Guru in Sri Ramakrishna, in Holy Mother Sharda Devi, in Swami Vivekananda, in the other direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and even among the household disciples of Sri Ramakrishna like Nag Mahashaya, Master Mahashaya, etc. Sri Ramakrishna spoke of God realization as the goal of life. The method was, he prescribed a very simple method for every one of us to live in the world by serving God in everyone. Serve the world. We are in the world, we are part of the society, human society. We have to serve society just as we serve ourselves. When we build our careers, we build our joys, we build our comforts. Simultaneously, we must serve the society also, thinking God alone is there in everyone, in society. God alone is in the external universe also, as is in our hearts. So with this idea, serve everyone in society. This is one of the important things that every one of us follow. And then he also said, we must control the greed for sense pleasures, greed for wealth. Greed. Sense pleasures are required. Each one has his own difficulties to overcome that, to live a comfortable life. He has to have some pleasures. But that is not greed. That is a legitimate desire for enjoyment. But going beyond that, every morning, every evening, every second I want only sense enjoyment, entertainment. Nowadays entertainment. Oh, enjoy. What enjoyment is there? So, how much do you enjoy? How many times can you eat in a day? Can you eat in a day 6 times and it be healthy? How many days will you be healthy? Your doctors will tell you, any more eating, you will develop diabetes. You will not be able to eat anything at all. So you have to, the opposite will come. So sense enjoyments cannot be allowed free hand. We have to put a control over it. That's why Sri Ramakrishna said, control the greed for sense enjoyment. There should be legitimate desire for sense enjoyment, then there is nothing wrong. But greed for sense enjoyments must be stopped. Wealth is required legitimately for many of our things, but greed for wealth is bad. How much of wealth do you want? So somebody has got 1 crore, somebody has got 2 crores. Perhaps that will be enough for him for his whole life, for him and his family. But he thinks about 10 generations after him. So for that, he wants to keep 200 crores for them. And he struggles for that from morning 9 o'clock to evening 9 o'clock. As if his life is given for the next 10. What will the next generation will do? Suppose you struggle for them and keep all the money. They will not do anything and then they just squander your money, get into evil ways. You will not be serving any useful purpose. So Sri Ramakrishna says, control the greed for wealth. So we want wealth, but not the greed for wealth. This is one of the fundamental Sri Ramakrishna taught. Have control over the greed for sense enjoyment and wealth in the worldly life. Serve man as an emblem of God. Whatever you do service to man is worship of God himself. If the spirit is there, then we can certainly progress in spiritual life also, being in the social life. So, Sri Ramakrishna also gave us simple spiritual practices for every one of us, whether we are monks or householders. He said, regularly, at least twice daily, pray. Pray to God 2 times in your own way. And think of God as your own. God is our own father, our own mother, our own relative, our own friend. So he is not a judge sitting there to punish you. Most of us will always think of God as a punisher. So he is looking at our sins. He will put us into trouble. He will send us punishment. This is the idea we have. Sri Ramakrishna is completely against this idea. God is your own father, your own mother. You can take freedom. And then you can demand what you want. It is not a begging with the father. It is demanding from the father. I have a right. So you are happy and will I be unhappy? And yeah, I am your son. I have a right for the joys you are enjoying. You are enjoying infinite joy and you have given me only this much joy. So you remove this temporary joy, give me the infinite joy. You can demand from God. So he says that we must pray to God with that idea. He is your own. Tell your difficulties, tell your joys, and let God be your companion always. So this type of a prayer you must do twice in a daily, at least. And then keep company of the holy. Come into company like this, where association with other people of like nature, who also want spiritual enlightenment, who want also lead a spiritual life, although they are in the householder's life. Along with that one, they also want to be spiritual. So like people, if they come together, that gives us a tremendous boost and self-confidence in our spiritual life. Sri Ramakrishna himself demonstrated this company of the holy. Being a highest realized person, he would go into Calcutta city to each house once in a week, once in 10 days, into Ramchandra Datta's house, or Balram Bose's house, or Master Mahashay's house, or other saint's house. Somebody's house he will go. He will give information to all the devotees in Calcutta. They all come and assemble there. Then Sri Ramakrishna will talk about God. Then he dance, singing his name. People, ordinary people who used to see him, go into ecstasy, losing himself completely in God, standing still like a statue. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they see the divine radiance from his body. Ordinary people, hundreds and thousands of people have seen God emanating through him. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna spread the glory of the company of the holy. When we come to the company of the holy, just for example, you are all here. Perhaps you have come earlier to the Aarti. So Aarti you have attended for half an hour. Then you are here listening to me for 1 hour. 1.5 hours you are thinking about spiritual things. Could you do it in your house? 1.5 minutes you will not be able to do it. As soon as you sit, your cell will ring. Then you get up. So 1.5 minutes what you cannot do in your house. Now you are doing it 1.5 hours without any effort. This is the glory. Shanamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnava tarne nauka, Shankaracharya sang. Shankaracharya said, 1 minute of company of the holy is enough to give a new turn to your life. You are spending 1.5 hours here without any effort. All of you are with a smiling face, none of you are suffering for being in this company. That means it is very natural for us to be in the spiritual company, which opens our heart, makes us feel lighter, because we are in our original type of life. We are souls, we are children of God, we are innocent, we are pure, we are holy. All that comes into our being. So slowly, this company of the holy makes us realize our own divinity. So Sri Ramakrishna recommended this company of the holy. We must try to have as much company of the holy as possible. Once in a week you can come to the ashrama or somewhere else where good people assemble, or once in 15 days, as much as you can. More you do, better you will be in spiritual terms. So Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, Sri Ramakrishna's personality, Sri Ramakrishna's name, and his Sangha, this Ramakrishna Math and Mission, these are all the places where you get impetus for living a spiritual life from wherever we are. It does not mean for spiritual life means one should become a monk. Being a householder also you can be highly spiritual. Being a householder also you can realize the same God as the monks realize. So Sri Ramakrishna is very clear about it. It is not the householdership, it is not the monastic life. It is the inner yearning. It is the dedication, it is the love of God that we develop within ourselves. That can be developed both by the householders and by the renunciates. to Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, his name, his personality, and his association with his Sangha. So all this, they are like lighthouses. They guide us. So let us take shelter under this lighthouse, see our path correct, read the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. You get all the guidance wherever you are, how to lead a spiritual life along with your secular life. You can be successful in both. Abhyudaya, Nishreyasa, both can come to you. Abhyudaya is joy of the secular life. Nishreyasa is joy of the spiritual life. The real Dharma must give you Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. Sri Ramakrishna's Dharma is that Dharma which gives you joy in your spiritual life and joy in your secular life also. May Sri Ramakrishna, may Holy Mother, may Swamiji bless us all. Let us read their life and teachings. Let us try to follow them and attain to fulfillment, the highest satisfaction in our life. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.